Hey guys, it's Kevin Summary for The Americans, Season 3, Episode 12, I Am Abassian Zadran, and holy shit, this episode was amazing. Now, I will say that I still thought Episode 10 was still the best episode of the season, but this was definitely the second best episode of the season. I mean, it's really hard to compete with Episode 10, because Episode 10 is the best episode of the entire show, but... Oh my god, this episode was crazy, and I cannot wait for the season finale, but at the same time, I don't want to see a season finale, because you guys know The Americans is my favorite show on TV, and I don't want, well, now that Justified's over, it is, basically, and I really don't want to see it end. I don't want to see the season end. It's such a great season. However, I can tell that we are in for an amazing finale after this episode, but let's just get into this episode because it was amazing. So, we start off and Elizabeth is in a telephone maintenance uniform and heads into the hotel, and Phillip lurks in a stairwell, then goes into room 629, and she's down in the basement and has a phone jack, and she plugs into the phone lines, and Phillip picks up the receiver. She clips the lines and tries line after line. He says he's trying to reach housekeeping, and she says it's housekeeping. He exits the room, and she fires a wire into the phone system, walks out. They get home and find Henry watching TV. Now, Paige is not there at this point because she actually left a note, and she's at church and is staying the night at Pastor Tim's afterward. And when we found it out, I'm like, oh shit, I really don't trust her, because it just seemed like she needed to tell someone about this and need to talk to someone about this revelation. So I thought she was going to tell Pastor Tim. That's what I thought was going to happen here, was that she was going to talk to Pastor Tim, and Pastor Tim was going to find out the truth. I thought that was going to happen in this episode. And Phillip doesn't like it and calls a house. Of course, they're worried about that as well. And basically, they don't really trust her as well, which I kind of like seeing that they don't. That just because they told her the secret. But here's the thing: if they trusted her, they would have. If they didn't really trust her, they wouldn't have told her their secret anyway. So basically, they asked them to have Paige call them, and Elizabeth says they should both go over since they don't know what they're dealing with. So they tell Henry they'll be back in a bit, and they leave, and they sit outside the pastor's house, but no one's there. And Phillip asks how long church lecture goes, and she has no clue. They have no idea where Paige is at this point. And the car pulls up, and Philip and Elizabeth bicker over how to handle it. And I mean, it's a very difficult situation that they handle it. I mean, their daughter could be telling this man the truth, and they're really worried. So Tim asks if everything is okay, and they tell Paige it's a school night, and she can't just leave a note and run off. And Paige says she's staying, and her dad says no. And Tim tells her that her parents are right, then tells Philip and Elizabeth that he's sorry, and says he appreciates the rates for the Kenya trip. And his wife brings out her bag, and they tell Paige goodnight. So they drive home, and Paige is like brooding in the backseat. They pull into the garage, and I really like what they do with Paige in this episode, because while I like Paige in last week's episode, I thought what they did here was a lot better. They pull into the garage, and Elizabeth tells her to stay put, and she says it was not okay. And Philip asks if she thinks this is a game, and says they have to be able to trust her. And Elizabeth asks if she said anything to Pastor Tim, and Paige is like, I said nothing. Like she's basically telling her, what do you think I did? And she's really upset, and they confront her and tell her that they're not saying she can't see them, but she has to act as if everything is normal, and she says it's not, and says she didn't tell him. And I really do feel bad for Paige, because here's the thing. I mean, it seems it's just really hard with what she has to do. She has to keep the secret, and it's really starting to annoy her that she has to keep it. I mean, again, I've said it before, my parents told me they were, spies, I probably would tell someone, and I thought Paige would do that. But of course, Paige is a lot smarter than Philip and Elizabeth thinks she is, and I kind of feel like they don't realize how smart she is, because she honestly is a very smart individual, and she just doesn't really know how to handle this. So they step outside and let her pass, and Elizabeth asks if Philip has to go to Martha's tonight, and says yeah. She follows Paige into the house, and he goes to see his wife, and he looks at the cars around her place and sees a car with a guy in it, and veers off, and Stan is there. When we saw Stan, I'm like, oh shit, because as we know, Stan is starting to get suspicious of Martha possibly planning the bug. So Martha talks about paying the apartment, and he says he's sorry to drop by, and says it's hard to talk at the office. He says he watched her stare into her coffee mug for a minute, and she says she was begging it to wake her up, and they laughed, and Stan says she seems distracted. Now, we know why she's distracted, because she doesn't really know what's going on with Clark. She knows that there's something going on with him, and she doesn't know what it is, and she definitely is distracted. And also, she's distracted because, one, this is the guy that she planted a bug in, and she says that she can't tell him that, but obviously she was told to lie, and basically she says it's hectic with Walter there, and says Gad's schedule is exhausting, and he says they know the secretaries make the place run and don't always get the credit they deserve. And Martha asks why he's there, and basically she says she heard gossip at work about his marriage, and says she's not the right person for him to talk to. He says he just wanted her to know that if there's anything that she's dealing with or any sort of drama, she can come to him and he'll make her feel better. She says okay and calls him Agent Beeman, and she says she has an early meeting and it's getting late. He stands to go, and she does the thing where like she blinks her eyes like Clark told her to do. So she lets him out, and he says he'll see her tomorrow. She locks the door and then freezes, looking concerned. She goes to a drawer, opens it, pulls out her wedding photo with Clark, and she looks kind of pained because she's starting to definitely get suspicious of what's going on with Clark. So Phil comes home and surprises Elizabeth, and which is Elizabeth, I mean, is pretty surprised about because he said he was going to see Martha, but he says Hans waved him off and said a guy with government plates went into her apartment. He says she left him 2 messages so far and says Hans did good. So she asks what now, and Philip says he doesn't know, and Martha leaves her apartment the next morning, and Hans pulls up and says he's a friend of Clark's, and she asks if he's alright. He opens the door for her to get in. She does, and he pulls away, and Elizabeth coaches Lisa about how to use the purse with the camera, and her husband's asking her a lot of questions, and Elizabeth says to take a lot of pictures. And I was very worried about this with Maurice because, as we know, Maurice was getting suspicious of Philip and Elizabeth in the last episode. So basically, he gives her a low dose sedative to keep her calm, and she says she'll meet her after they agree. And Hans takes Martha to meet Philip. She asks what they're doing and who that man was. He says he came last night but saw someone go into her apartment, and he was driving a car with government plates. And she says it was Stan, and of course, he has to pretend like he doesn't know who Stan is, and he asks what he wanted. She says he told her to come with him if she has anything on her mind, and basically Clark says that they may have to go away someplace new, and says it'll be okay. And Martha says she can't, but Philip says they don't know, or they will be bugging her phones and following her. So, he's really worried for a couple of reasons. One, he knows that, Stan's there, and he's just really worried what could end up happening. I mean, he could recognize that it's Philip, a lot of things could happen. So he promises that he will figure it out, and I thought that was a really well done scene. So Adder Halt then chases Stan down and says he has some more questions about Nina, and he asks what's with him, and he says he thinks something was going on between him and Nina, which is true, there was, and he basically thinks that Stan is the one that planted the bug, and honestly, I can understand why he thinks that. I mean, Stan, is making himself seem really innocent and everything, and we know he didn't, but it definitely could seem like he did, and he says maybe the woman he shot kicked his ass and killed Amador, because of course they're trying to figure out who killed Chris, and we know who killed Chris. It was Philip and Elizabeth that did it, and basically the mail truck cruises by, they hear it all, and clerks live transcribing this conversation, and Oleg waits for the translations, and Elizabeth meets Maurice, but she was expecting to see Lisa, and she says this wasn't the deal. He says he's handling this side of things. She swaps money for the camera, tells him she wants to see Lisa next time in person, and he blows her off. And I thought that was really interesting. I mean, just the fact that Maurice is there, it just shows how suspicious he is becoming of them, which I find really interesting. So Arkady says the mail robot microphone is a waste of money, and Oleg and Tatiana think that he's giving up too soon. And again, they have their whole plan, so they're really trying to figure out how to start this plan and if it really is a good plan, if it's going to work for them. And basically, Philip tells Elizabeth about Stan showing up at Martha's place, and they wonder what that means because they don't know about the whole bug situation. They have no idea what's going on there. So they don't know if Stan, is starting to get suspicious of Philip, and, they're really concerned about what could actually end up happening there. So I really like seeing that because, of course, it could end up really bad for them, and I don't know. I mean, I kind of feel like next season Stan's gonna find out the truth. I feel like next season's gonna be the Stan season, the one where Stan finds out what's going on. If that's true, I think that's gonna be really interesting. So Paige comes in with a photo album and asks about people in the photos, and she asks about all these different people, and I really like what she asks here because she asks if these people really are, there's this one guy she asks if that's her cousin, and she asks about Aunt Helen and asks who those people are because of course she went to see Aunt Helen but didn't even recognize her, and they tell her to lower her voice. She says it's a lie and tells her mother not to touch her, and she's just pissed off, and they want her to keep as quiet as possible and everything because Henry's there, but honestly, how can you keep quiet about this? And Paige stalks out, and she's really upset. So Martha sits down with a glass of wine and makes a call to her mom and dad. She asks how they are, and she says she just wanted to talk to her. She says her life is great and that Clark is busy working, and so is she. She says it's just hard sometimes. She says she has vacation saved up but doesn't want to leave right now. And it really sums up how Martha's feeling overall. She tells her mom she's fine and asks what they're doing for their anniversary, and she very quickly changes the subject. She doesn't seem to really care much about what's going on with her and Clark because she doesn't really know what's going on. So Philip goes to talk to Paige and closes the door to her room for privacy. He sits down beside her with some photos, and I really love what he did here. Again, it just really shows how good their bond is, and I love this. and he tells her that there is no Aunt Helen, and says her mom wasn't well and needed time to recover, and he says it's not all a lie. He gives her this photo and says that's the night, he tells her what is true, that there's a photo that they took the night Henry was born in the hospital, and he shows her another when they went camping when she was 7, and she says Henry was afraid of a bear that was going to eat him, and her dad says he didn't know that. So I thought that was really interesting with that. It's just a little detail, but it just shows how well aware Paige is of things, which I really like seeing. So Oleg looks over some transcripts, and his coworker tells him ending this is a mistake, but Arkady doesn't see it, and he says Arkady has always looked out for him, and she says he should look out for him now. She says this operation has a lot of potential, and Arkady may not get many more chances like this. Oleg's really concerned about if this is going to work, if it's going to, expose his cover, and I like what Tatiana's saying, that they need to do this now because they may not get another chance to do this, and they basically have to do it. So I really like seeing that. So Phillip tells Elizabeth that she should go see her mom and take Paige with her, and says if she doesn't, he will. And I thought this was really interesting because, I mean, we know that she can't really do that, but they want her to do that. And it'd probably be the best thing for Paige if she did go with them. I said this was probably going to happen last week. I'm pretty sure that, that's what we're saying. If the Paige is going to go with them, it's probably just the best thing if she does go with them. So at the hotel, Phillip says he's there to pick up Abassian Zadran, and we finally find out who that is in this episode, because of course the episode's called I Am Abassian Zadran, and we find out who that is. So the security guy makes a call, and Elizabeth intercepts the call and gives him clearance to take the guy, and Phillip introduces Abassian to Elizabeth as Laura, who is a CIA operative, and she talks to him about anti-aircraft weapons, and they ask him how well he knows the man who he traveled with, and Phillip says he suspects they may sabotage the meeting, and they rattle off some very impressive information. And Abassian, I have to say, is a very interesting character. He's kind of unlike any character we've seen before. He asked them why there is no war in America, when Afghanistan's always at war, when they have nothing. And by the way, when this whole scene was going on, I'm like, is this the Americans or Homeland? Like, when this guy was talking, I felt like I was watching Homeland. I really did. Oh, I can't wait for that to come back in September. That's going to be awesome. He says his men are in the mountains and he doesn't know the others. He says his men want to fight and die as martyrs, and he says martyrs are entombed as they fall soaked in blood because their honor is so great. He says he hates traitors, and Phillip says if Abassian was to go to the meeting alone, it would work out, and he asks Phillip what his intelligence says about him. And Elizabeth says he's loyal and brave, and he says he cuts the throats of the communists and has killed many with his knife and watched them die. He says he found young Soviet soldiers swimming and laughing and cut them down. He says if there were 200 infidels on the road, he would cut every one of them like a goat, and you see the look on their face. They don't really know how to respond to this, and I like seeing that they don't really know how to respond to what he's saying, and I found that to be really interesting. So Gabriel's having breakfast with Claudia, and yeah, Claudia was back in this episode. Now it makes sense why. Of course, Margot Martindale's show got canceled, so I'm pretty sure that Claudia is going to probably come back to the show and maybe even be a series regular next year. I could definitely see that happening. I like seeing Gabriel and Claudia interact because we never see the CIs interact, so I thought it was cool to see these two interact. And she says Phillip will slow up progress with Paige, and he says he's not certain it's the right thing for Phillip and Elizabeth. She asks if he wishes he didn't come back, and he says it was dull, and he asks what happened at the center when they heard the boy kill his family. And Claudia says she never seen anything like it, and she says they fired the head of the American department, and of course, they're talking about Jared and everything, which I thought was interesting that they talked about. They haven't brought that up, so I like that they brought that up and everything. And we find out why Gabriel's there, and basically she says she thought they might shut down with director S. Gabriel, and says they still want to try it again with Paige. And Claudia says they think Gabriel can pull it off, and that's basically why Gabriel's doing it, because Claudia would not be as able to pull this off as Gabriel is. Claudia, I think, she's not as experienced as Gabriel. Gabriel's been with them longer. He's going to be able to persuade them more. I mean, I definitely agree with Claudia saying that. Probably Gabriel is the best person to do this, because I'm not saying that Claudia wouldn't do a good job, but Claudia, Phillip, and Elizabeth, as we know, they don't really get along very well. They don't exactly trust her all the time. So definitely, I think what she's saying about Gabriel being the one to pull it off would definitely be the best idea. So Abassian tells the security guard he needs to speak with his friends. They let him go. He goes and knocks on their door, asks them to come have tea. They go into one of the rooms. The guard relaxes. There are screams and scuffling sounds, and the guard comes running. The door is deadbolted. They have to bust it in, and they go inside and find only Abassian still standing. The other two were gutted. They tell him to drop the knife. He glares, and that was such a crazy scene. I mean, awesome action, but a crazy scene, and I'm kind of worried that Abassian is going to give the Soviets a really bad rep. I really feel like it's going to happen. So Oleg and Tatiana try and talk to Arkady about keeping the project going. They read him a transcript about people, and honestly, I like their point here. That's a really good point here. They talk about how there's a transcript about people talking about going to a movie, and she says basically, um, they could be flirting and says they are possible adulterers, and Oleg says to please give it some time. So basically, Arkady needs to make a decision if he really wants to move forward with this project, and basically we'll see what ends up happening. So Paige lies in bed when Elizabeth comes to talk to her, and I love this scene. She turns on her radio up to a certain volume so that way Henry can't hear. And she goes to sit near Paige, and she says she's going to see her mother in Russia before she dies. And she says she talked to Phillip, and they think she should go with her. And I think that'd be the best thing for Paige. It'd be really therapeutic. It'd really be a relief for Paige because Paige has never actually met any of her real relatives, none of them. And for her to meet her grandmother, I think would be a great thing for Paige. So she says it will be her only chance to meet her grandmother, but it's her choice, and I think Paige is gonna do it. I really do. I mean, I read the synopsis of next week, and it says Paige and Elizabeth go on a daring mission, and I think that's what it is. That they really are not supposed to be doing this. So is this gonna backfire for them? I'm not sure. We'll see what happens, but I'm very interested in seeing what's gonna happen there. So the final scene of this episode was so intense. I loved it, and it was amazing, and we'll get to it. So Hans is outside of Martha's place. As Philip goes upstairs, he finds her sitting on the bed with her suitcase packed, and she says she's sorry, but she's going to her parents. It's just too much for her. She says she needs a break and says she can't take it. She says everyone knows she's lying, and he's not there when she gets home, of course. Now, he knows about the bug and everything, and Philip says he knows it's hard, but he's trying. She says she knows, but it's not enough, and it's just not enough to, keep the secret. And she tells him she's sorry and cries. She says she doesn't even know what to say to her mother. And she says she can't be here with him like this. She says when she was 18, she left home and told her mom to turn her room to a sewing room. She wouldn't do it. She stands and Philip speaks her name. And then guess what he does? This, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. He takes off his glasses, pulls off his hairpiece while she watches, and literally reveals his identity as Philip, and that's how the episode ends. And she's gasping. We don't know how she's going to react, and that's how it ends. Now, I think this was probably the best thing to do for Martha. I mean, she revealed so much to him. He needed to basically tell her the truth of what was going on. He would basically was forced to tell her. He had no obligation but to do that. So I think it was probably the best thing for Martha. But how is Martha going to react to this? Is Philip going to tell her everything? Is he going to tell her that he is a Soviet? Is he going to tell her all these things? Or is he just going to reveal his identity to her? Is he not going to tell her what he really does? Because I'm interested in seeing how far this could go. My only problem with this is Martha going to be okay with this? If she finds out that he's lying to her, is she going to be okay? Is this going to backfire on him? Is Stan going to find out possibly? I could see that happening. I mean, there are a huge plethora of things that could happen, and I can't wait to see what ends up happening here because there's so many things that could happen, and I love that we're not really sure what's going to happen next. Let's talk about Paige and Elizabeth. Is this really going to work out? I mean, what they're doing is not, they should not be doing. So how is Gabriel and Claudia going to react to this? Is Claudia going to go back to being a CI? I kind of feel like next season they're going to end up like teaming up together. They'll both be their CIs, but like they'll alternate between things. Gabriel, of course, wants to tell Paige, what she needs to do. Is he going to be able to do that? I don't think that's happening this season. I don't think he's going to be able to do it. I don't think she's ready to listen. I don't think she's willing to listen. She's already acting out. She already doesn't really want a part of it, and she just wants answers. She just wants to be loved, and she just wants answers. That's all she wants. I don't think she wants to be involved with all the KGB stuff, and even though they want her to be, I don't think she really wants to be, and I don't think it's going to be as easy as Gabriel thinks it is. He thinks it's going to be a lot easier than it is, so we'll see what happens there. Stan. Let's talk about Stan. Is Stan going to find out that Martha planted the bug? Of course, it is the season finale. I'm interested in seeing what's going to happen there. If he finds out, will he tell everyone that Martha did it? I don't really know. I mean, they have that trust and everything, but I'm really worried about what's going to happen now. Is Martha going to work with Philip and Elizabeth? I could definitely see this happening. Maybe she works with them. If she does find out the truth about Philip, maybe she reacts to it while she works with them. And I just feel like gradually more people are going to start to find out. I feel like it's just going to become a thing where they're going to start to tell more people their identity. If they can tell their daughter, they can tell anyone. Really, that's what that's trying to show. Arkady has decision make. He has a big decision make. He needs to decide, do I want to do this or do I not want to do this? Because they need an answer. They need an answer, and he needs to give them an answer. He can't tell them, maybe I'll do this, maybe I won't. He needs to give them a straight answer on what he wants to do there with this project, because it's a good idea. They just need to go through it and figure out really what they want to do about this project. So we'll see what happens there as well. Pastor Tim. I'm kind of worried that Paige is going to end up eventually telling Pastor Tim at some point. I mean, not now, but I definitely feel like in the near future, she definitely is going to tell Pastor Tim what's going on. Henry, I feel like they're going to tell Henry as well. I mean, Henry needs to know about this. I mean, you can't just not tell Henry. Henry, yeah, he's not as smart as Paige, but it might be time. It might be time to just tell Henry, because now that Paige knows, it might just be time for Henry to know. I could definitely see it happening. And as I said, I feel like Paige is going to end up being the one to tell Henry, and he's going to end up being really pissed about it. So we'll see what happens there. What else is there to talk about? I'm trying to think what else I can talk. Oh, Maurice. Maurice is what's gonna happen with Maurice? I mean, clearly Maurice is on to Elizabeth. He knows, that she's hiding something. He doesn't know what she's hiding, but he can tell that there's something that she's not really telling Lisa, and I don't really know what's gonna happen there. All I know is that the episode is the date is title of the episode is actually the date of the evil Russia speech, which is basically a speech that Reagan gave, where he talked about how evil Russia is, and it just makes me think that the Soviets, it's going to get worse for them. I don't think it's going to get better. I really don't know what's going to happen in this finale, and that's something I love, because I had no idea what was going to happen in last year's finale. I didn't know anything that was going to happen. I didn't know the amount of, shit that was going to happen, and just not knowing, I love that I don't know what's going to happen, because it makes me more intrigued for the finale, definitely. I can't wait to see what ends up happening. It's going to be an amazing, I know it's going to be an amazing finale. I can't wait to see it. Let me know what you guys thought of this episode. Overall, guys, second best episode of the season. Definitely amazing episode. I'm just interested in seeing how Martha's going to react to this revelation. Is this going to be a good thing? Is this a bad idea? I don't know if this is going to backfire for them, possibly. I could definitely see it possibly backfiring for them. But what do you guys think? We'll see what happens in the next episode. But that's basically for my review. Hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you guys saw this episode, and I'll see you guys in my next video, which will be for another classic movie review. So I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.